call the representative town meeting for August 6, 2018 to order. Just ask everybody to rise and salute the flag, please.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would you like to call the roll call, please?
Ms. Cairns?
Here.
Mr. Condon? Mr. D'Amato? Mr. Denbeck?
Yeah.
Ms. Driscoll? Ms. Fedor? Mr. Brascarelli? Mr. Goldstein?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Ms. Merriman? Mr. Muckle? Ms. Mullen?
Here.
Mr. Olinsu?
Here.
Ms. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Perkins?
Here.
Ms. Bliss?
Here.
Mr. Rebus?
Here.
Mr. Rocchetti? Ms. Sevilla? Mr. Stankoff?
Here.
Mr. Welch Collins?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Town Clerk. All right, this time item C in the call is public comment. Any member of the public like to make any public comments on tonight's agenda? Any member of the public like to make any comments? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm here on,
Come to the table and
Sure.
use the microphone. State your name and address, please. We're going to keep commenting, just so everybody knows, down to about 3 minutes, if you could, please.
I don't need a long time, I live at my name is Sean Monahan, I live at 108 Dayton Road, and I'm here obviously on behalf of the sale of the property of the old Cohansey School. For me, it's pretty basic. I personally like living on what I feel is the outskirts of where all the action is in the town. So if I want to see the action, I go down to the end of Dayton, I take a right, and I can go to any place that I want to down on Route 85. I don't feel as though we need I could be speaking out of place with my knowledge, but from what my understanding, it's looking to do a zone change for building of multi-units, whether the correct lingo would be low-income, elderly, whatever it may be. We're talking about just simply increasing traffic. I don't feel as though it's the right place to make a proposal for a tax benefit for the town. There's other areas, maybe you check out the old airport or something. It's preserved the way it is. I like our neighborhood. I feel like through the emails that I've been reading, I'm speaking on behalf of many people in our neighborhood, some who are here tonight and hopefully can speak up, but I don't know, it's short and sweet. I don't want zone change, and I don't want units going up down the street from my house. I think it's going to devalue my property, and I'm happy with the neighbors I have. I don't need a couple hundred more. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the public like to make a comment?
Yes, Tommy.
Yes, sir.
It's going to decrease on the value of our property. And I know you people don't care because you don't live down there. So, but those units there, low income.
Time out. Why take a seat, give a name and address for a record.
Okay,
Take
name
that time.
Robert Rossi,
Yeah?
698 Boxall Street Extension.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I think it's going to decrease our property up there, and you're going to put low income people in there, and that's going to bring, if you want to see low income, I'll go to New London, not Waterford. All right, that's why I've been here all my life. I grew up on Deerfield, and I got property on 4th Avenue, I got, and everything. I just don't want to see it, because you're going to bring more people into our school system, you're going to have to add more teachers, it's going to cost this town a lot more money if you bring them in, low income people. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is David Welch, I live at 975 Vauxhall Street Extension, Clifford Hill. I'm here also to discuss the sale that you guys have proposed for Lindsay School. Obviously, there are a lot of us that have been communicating and talking and are not in favor of the zone change and the condo units, apartment units, and everything that you guys are proposing down at that site. We're concerned about traffic, concerned about our community, concerned about our schools, and I actually would challenge the RTM to come back to the public and give us data on how you think it's going to raise the tax revenue and not depreciate our home values and increase our tax revenue instead of just planning to vote on something this evening to keep pushing it forward. I haven't heard this community come forward to any of the residents in support of our acceptance of this plan or any other plan. It kind of just seems to be shuffled through, backdoored, hidden in some agenda that keeps kind of popping up every year. Right? We talked about this last October, kind of pops up again. And, you know, we hear about it from emails, and a bunch of us were on a board and a committee that was supporting this September, October of last year. And the email chains start coming out of, hey, did you guys hear? Did you hear? Did you hear? And hey, our first selectman trying to push this through. We don't know what's going on. We all need to kind of show our faces again. And it just seems a little shady, seems a little backhanded. I'm a little disappointed in the RTM right now, or the board, for even maybe even proposing this without trying to get the community involved, right? And there's a lot of information out there on how to get low-income, affordable housing, veteran, elderly-based housing. There's just a bunch of articles on 10-step processes on how to do that. You guys should take a look at that, right? The number one in every one of those articles is get your community involved, get them engaged, and have them provide help in getting this stuff going and moving forward in the right direction. I am concerned, not just that I don't believe you're going to be able to get tax revenue out of it. I think it's going to be a traffic problem. I think it's going to be a burden on our schools, on our fire system, on our police system, on our teachers. I think it's going to be on our social services, just in general, all around the board. So I think you ought to not vote to change the zoning, and I think we should not push this through. I am for being part of any committee that the board wants to put on and helping find the right use of that land. But, you know, we're a smaller community at that end, and we're quiet. We all know each other. We all walk around there. We enjoy the parks. We enjoy that whole environment and the closeness of that. And I don't want it to be a section now that we're going to avoid and not go down because there's cars parked on the streets and kids running around crazy all over the place in the school system that, you know, is going to be overburdened and challenged. So I think you guys ought to really consider not pushing this forward. And again, consider the complete evaluation of what the RTM should be voting on and not just the sale of a property, so that hopefully we make some money down the road. And instead, maybe it costs us a lot more money. I don't know what 50 units of tax revenue is for us in that kind of environment. You guys should, but you know, bringing on a firefighter has got to be at least 120, 140,000 with salary and benefits. Same thing for a police officer. Teacher's got to be close to 100 grand. So when you bring in 60 kids and 100 families, it's going to be a big problem. You guys ought to think about that. That's all I have to say.
Public speak on it.
Question.
Yes, Mr. Clark, yeah.
I should have started this one. Thank you. For the gentleman who was just here, and I wish I had asked the gentleman who was here before you, what do you propose the town should do with this property?
Who was performing?
That's what's your name.
Yes, please.
Well, I haven't had any time to really put into that, nor do I think the RTM's solicited feedback from any of the residents in the town, or especially that area. But just simply finding a way to get rid of the old school, if that's one way. I know that there was a lot of votes and there was some desire to maintain the school. I wasn't part of that, I apologize. But even if you just kept the zoning the same, find a way to subdivide it into houses of equal size. I mean, I believe you could still get 4 to 6 homes on that 10 acres. And, you know, on an average value of $4,000 a home in taxes, you know, that's 12 grand. So, you know, I really, I'm not sure. And again, I'd be willing to be on a board or participate in a study on what to do to that land. I think if you asked all of us, you know, we don't have the mindset of just taxes. We know that we don't want our taxes to go up, and we need to find a way, and I know it's your job, and it's the burden of the office you chose. to come up with tax revenues and ideas to help keep my taxes down. I understand that. But you know, we as a community, the town doesn't fully support the sports in this town. They do fund portions of each of the sports programs, but all the sports programs are
Kurt, with all due
significantly
respect, I
challenged.
asked you what you thought the town should do with that property.
And I'm telling you, I think it should be considered that it be multi-utilized for sports. I think it should be used for any way that you can subdivide it into properties and filter it with similar homes that are around that property now.
Thank you. Could you allow me to backtrack to the gentleman prior? Gentleman who was,
I agree
with what?
with everything he said.
No, what do you think the town should do with the property is the question.
Sean Monahan, 108 Dayton Road. I agree with what that gentleman said, because it's all been part of what you guys really haven't heard from us, because it's what we've been saying as a group through email, and I think that's where we were kind of going from, like,
I'm trying to give you an opportunity, sir.
okay, thank you very much, ma'am, I appreciate that. This is what I think we should do with that property, either build it up and put some more homes in there, individual living, individual family homes, or utilize it as town property. I mean, you opted to save the school or a portion of the school at one point in time. So now you're looking to maybe go back and find somebody to purchase the property and rip it down. Maybe go back to preserving that part of the property as a place for us to go and gather, a town green. I'm not really sure, but there's enough property there, enough acreage, I think, to build off a few homes. So a few homes, keep some property for the town. That's what I would be in agreement with.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Any other members of the public? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Tamara Tabor. I live at 45 Kenyon Road. We've lived there for 20-something years. I'm going to read from my notes just because I'm not good at public speaking. Basically, our feeling is that the original zone law was there for a purpose, and that property is not zoned for any of the purpose of any type of building for housing. Whether it's luxury, Section 8, elderly, any type of apartments, it's not zoned for that. So when my husband and I went to purchase a home in Waterford, we didn't want to live next to any type of building. We wanted to live near a nice school. So if you want to change the law, the zoning law, why? There's plenty of places in Waterford that the zoning would permit for that to already occur. So why then go and change this? It's not what we signed up for, so to speak. We bought a home next to a school in a community with homes, not any buildings. So I don't want to live in a community that has a building with multi-units, whatever they're for. You know, I know the people say, oh, you just don't want old people, you just don't want this people, that people. It's not about that. Like the gentleman before said, we just don't want a building full of people. We have homes that we paid extra money to live in this community because it was a community of homes, not in a community full of buildings. So that's like one of my big issues. And if you need some ideas for things to do with that property, I'm sure the people of that community could give you lots of ideas, because we've been looking at that empty lot for a long time. But a daycare, a private school, a church, anything that would be in keeping with a school environment, which is what we purchased our homes around, would be fine. If the town can afford to keep it, obviously, sports fields or a dog park or a walking, plant 200 trees and give the deer in your backyard and the bears in my backyard a place to go. You know, why does every vacant lot need to be a building? I understand there's a tax burden, but there's also millions of dollars other places that are already zoned for that. So it's kind of upsetting that it would even be on the table to rezone something that doesn't need to be rezoned in a neighborhood where people stand to lose tens of thousands, 50,000 potentially, $100,000 of property value that we have worked 20, 30, 40, 50 years for. It's not necessary. If the town needs any type of housing, luxury, low income, starter homes, whatever they need, there's places for that. In our community, that's not the place for it.
Well, I don't want anybody to get into debate here. I really don't, it's one of the, I think. Yes, sir.
Point of inquiry, Mr. Moderator, does the RTM have the authority to rezone?
We had nothing to do with zoning.
Thank you, that's what I
That's
thought.
everybody in the audience, but we had nothing to do with zoning at all.
Thank you.
And I don't think any rules have changed, we will. It has to do with the planning and zoning commission, so I understand the concern when you talk about zoning change, but we cannot vote on any issue like that. Yes, sir.
Just point of order, Mr. Moderator, just Tom, before we get to him. I just want to remind the RTM of two rules. Number one is, everyone here is obviously, as long as they're a resident of Waterford, gets to comment about the proposal when we get to that item. So I don't want anyone to think they need to leave, that we are going to try to explain, what the proposal is and answer questions from the RTM and from the audience. I guess if you wanted to speak now, that's fine, but they should reserve the fact that if they have, as Ms. Palmer said, questions or comments, we'll be getting to a lot of their concerns later on.
That's fine.
That's going to be tonight?
Yeah.
That'll be explained tonight? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
On the agenda, after a few items, there will be a presentation by the first selectman and town attorney that explains more details about the project. I think some of the figures that people have in their minds are not correct. Any other member of the public like to speak at this time? Any other member of the public like to speak at this time? Yes, sir.
Phil Fowler, 37 Dayton Road. Most of my comments I have are somewhat emotional, and I've lived in my house for 28 years. I lived in the Jason house for 5 years prior to that. I bought my house because I love this area. I love the community I live in. When I first bought the house and lived in that area, there was no Crystal Mall, there was no Home Depot, there was no Jarrett's, there was no Waterford Commons, there was no Target. I had horses across the street. I had a school across the street. It was a community that was very valued to me and most of the people that lived around me for its high quality of life. Now with the onset of all this development that's happened around us, piece by piece, it's like they're taking a piece of the soul of the neighborhood. This solely, and I think, boiled down to what most people said, is a quality of life issue. We chose to live in this community, spend our money, and spend our days in this community, not in a community of people who don't own property, who rent the property, and have skin in the game. This property should be sold just like the other speakers here have also said, broken up in a form that it can be made into individual housing and be a continuation of our community. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Any other members like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hello. My name is Janet Smith. I live at 47 Canyon Road. I don't have children, but I can tell you there's a lot of children in the neighborhood that would probably benefit from some kind of a park there, a playground there, or daycare center, dog park. There's a lot of animals there. But if the zoning is changed, you change the whole character of the whole neighborhood. And it's just not right. Low-income affordable housing, multi-units, they belong where people have walking access to grocery stores, department stores, transportation. That's not really available there. So I would really like to see a dog park, a daycare center, park for children, that would make more sense than having, multi-units there that really just don't not only fit the neighborhood, but it's not going to fit anybody who's going to live there. Because they're going to find it difficult to go to the grocery store. People who need to walk, they can't drive. So I'm hoping that you take all this into consideration and consider the people that have been living here. Our property taxes, our values have gone down. And I like to see something there that can benefit not only the community, but help the town out too. But maybe make it pretty and raise the value a little bit, so more people want to come into the community to live. And so I'm hoping to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Janet Tyler, 595 Oxwell Street Extension. Excuse me. I am against the sale of Cohansey School to be developed into apartments because it will not enhance our quality of life due to traffic and congestion, nor preserve our character as a residential owner-occupied community. I am concerned about decreased property values with an apartment building there. I believe that what they are proposing is much larger than what the site could accommodate. We've been down this road before, and about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, and we had many meetings with the Planning and Zoning Committee, and at that point a traffic study was discussed. I don't know if it was ever done or what the results were, but I can tell you from personal experience that the traffic on that street and the surrounding areas is very, very heavy. I have almost been hit in the crosswalk at the corner of Chapman and Vauxhall more than one time. The last time my hand was on the hood of the car. So traffic is a major consideration. We have new young families in our neighborhood. They didn't buy in that neighborhood because of apartment buildings. They bought into a residential neighborhood. The last go-round, this committee had asked to be brought to the table to discuss other options. I believe we had one meeting, and we are still willing to discuss other options. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Would anyone else like to speak? Anyone else like to, yes?
My name is David Rush. I live on 4 Dayton Road. My issue is more with traffic. I have 2 young kids walking up and down the street. And I've lived there for 15 years, and it gets pretty fast. And I think if you let a large group of people move in right there, it's going to be pretty dangerous. It's going to be pretty dirty too. So I think you can reconsider this. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Klein. I'm at 599R Vauxhall Street Extension. I have 2 very young kids, one of which goes to the Friendship School, and the bus picks them up right on Vauxhall. I know the bus driver has said that sometimes cars fly past the stop sign, so I always worry, and with traffic from the apartments, I'm worried, about my kids playing outside, even though our driveway is long. But I second the other woman that said I would love a park in walking distance for my children, because the one little park, it's rusted out. I feel like something like that for them to run around would be awesome. We could take walks. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Ma'am, could you just repeat your name for the record? I think we missed it.
Lindsay Klein.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Hi, Gary Pirelli, 49 Kenyon Road.
couple of things I want to go over, and that's leaving the school up. I understand the Historical Society wanted to leave that up for historical reasons. The building itself is just a square brick building that people went to school there. I mean, everybody has a history somewhere. Architecturally, the building has nothing. There's nothing inside. It needs to be like remodeled, demolished. I mean, it's toxic, and it's an eyesore right now. I believe people are living in there. The building should have been taken down with the other buildings. Now, if you get somebody back there, it's going to cost probably double what it would have cost when they were already on site. So that was one decision I questioned. And I understand the Historical Society, leave it up. We went to school there, our kids went to school there, but like I say, the building offers nothing. I can see, you know, buildings down in New London or Connecticut College, they're beautiful buildings. Craftsmen worked on those buildings, and it looks it. That thing offers nothing aesthetically. The other thing is, now this property 2 years ago was for sale for $1 million, I believe. Now the sale price is what, 800,000?
660,000.
Is that correct? 800,000 is the asking price?
660,000.
How much?
660,000.
How much? I'm hard of hearing. How much? I didn't bring my glasses either.
660,000.
Thank you, Phil. And at that price range, the only thing, you're not going to find a developer to go in there and build 6 or 7 or 8 homes, which that property could probably handle. Because they can't go in there, develop that property, and make any money. So I'm thinking possibly if we come down on the price and make it affordable to a contractor or a developer to come in there and put up 6 to 8 homes, that'll increase everybody else's property value. Those people own their property, and we don't have a lot of traffic, and traffic is a big issue on that, you know, in that vicinity there, that neighborhood. Traffic is an issue. That's one option. Another option is to put up condos, you know, come down a little bit in your price, have somebody develop it and put up 18 condos, 22 condos that you have to buy. Nobody in that neighborhood rents. Every house there is owned and lived in by the owner. There's no rental properties there. You don't find duplexes and triplexes. They're all single-family homes, and the owner lives in that home. Rental property isn't a big part of that neighborhood. And if, you know, the only way somebody can afford to spend $650,000 is if they have a multi-unit complex up there, and that's how they're going to make the money. I understand town of Waterford needs revenue. Financially, we're not in super shape from what I understand. So, I mean, the dollar signs look good, but you're going to devaluate our property in order to make your tax money and sell the property at $650,000. I say drop your price down to $350,000, $400,000, make it affordable to a developer that wants to go in there and put in 20 condos that are for sale. You're going to make money back on that tax money. Our property values are going to go up, so our taxes would go up because our assessment's going to be higher. So I think in the long run, it's all going to come back to be a good thing, and you're going to have a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of traffic, turn Kenyon Road into a freeway with 44 units or whatever you're planning on. 2 years ago, they were talking about 260 units. So now we're down to 44 or whatever the number is, and it's a lot better than that big number that we had 2 years ago. But it's still 44 rental units, and who knows what's going to happen there? What kind of criteria are they going to have for the renters that move in? Are they going to have a credit check? Are they going to have a criminal background check? Are they, you know, these are the type of things that are important. Are they going to have a credit analysis? You know, like nobody under 680 can even move into that place. If your credit is less than that, don't even think about moving here. Are they going to allow pets? You know, these are the type of things. I know we're a ways away from that, but we need criteria set for whoever's going to live there. And most rental properties, they start out veterans, seniors, and then they sit there with vacant units, and it's like, okay, well, you know, he's kind of a high risk, but, you know, he's got a wife, and the kids are cute, and he's got first month and last month and security, so let's give it to him. Then he moves in, you find out that the guy's got a record or whatever. I mean, so it's important to do these quality checks. You're gonna move him into a neighborhood with, you know, elderly people that live in that neighborhood, families that live in that neighborhood, and it's gonna get shoved down our throat. I think a lot of consideration needs to be made for, you know, what you're gonna do with that property. And I don't know the finances of Waterford, but, you know, at 650, 800, or $1 million, whatever, it's unaffordable for anybody to go in and develop that unless they have a multi-unit situation.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak? If not, we're going to get on our agenda. Item D on the agenda, consider act upon the minutes of June 4th, 2018 regular meeting. What's your pleasure? Motion made and seconded that the minutes of the June 4th, 2018 regular meeting be accepted. Any comments, corrections? None, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All people abstained. Michelle Moore, yes. Michael. Okay, the minutes from the June 4th meeting will be accepted as presented with a few exemptions. Right. On the correspondence received tonight, before the meeting, Finance, Wage, and Personnel RTM Standing Committee, Mr. Paul Goldstein, as chairperson, submitted a report on the investigation they're doing on Public Act 17-65, which allows property tax exemption of Gold Star parents and spouses. And to summarize his report, he believes, in working with the town attorney on a draft ordinance, a public hearing will be held on tentative date September 12th, and most likely will be on the next RTM meeting. That's correct, Mr. Goldstein?
Yes, if I may, Mr. Moderator, if I'm not jumping.
Please.
If I'm not jumping the gun, under F, my minutes were put in, and as my colleague, Representative Driscoll pointed out to me in the third paragraph of the minutes, my bifocal was malfunctioning, and I was trying to type it was 25,000, could be 20, as the motion says, and it please stated in the report that I was given to this meeting.
Where it says the amount of municipality is set up to 25, that should be 20, right?
Correct, and if you look at the motion that we passed unanimously, it says 20,000.
Okay. We'll make that correction and we'll file that with town clerk, so let's copy the town clerk, we'll say 20,000. Everybody else will make that correction if they would tonight. Any other suggestions, Mr. Goldstein?
That's it, thank you.
All right. The other thing I received tonight and I set down is a letter from a member of the First District, Tim Conan, will take us on a new business. He would like the purchasing ordinance 3.08 purchasing to went to committee for review, and we can bring it up at that time. No, it will be at the end on the new business. Yeah. And I think those are the only two correspondence I received. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Well, now it's item E. I'm sorry, isn't it? July 25th, I received a letter from, as moderator, on behalf of the Historical Properties Commission of Madison, that consideration of the present and future status of Townville Historic Property 1890 Devon's 10 cars, 57 Oakbury Road, be assigned to the committee. The commission has discussed a number of ideas for this use over the last several years, including suggestions posted on Facebook. As a recommendation of the Director of Planning and Development, I drafted a request for an expression of interest 2 years ago with the hope of receiving a subsequent RFPs. However, there is no follow-up by the town on either RFEIs or RFPs. To date, the town has no plan for the building use, let alone its restoration. Perhaps discussion could begin with the question, does the town of Waterford believe its historical resources have value? Do they matter? Are they worth investing in? I'm happy to be part of this discussion. I suggest this matter be assigned to Education Standing Committee, which has considered preservation issue previously. Bob and I, his historic property secretary, municipal historian, and the copy went to the Abby Pearsall, our planning director. We'll have to bring up later on also to assign to the committee. Okay, item F on the agenda is we did receive a committee report on Finance, Wage, and Personnel Standing Committee, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion that this committee report be received for the record. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? The ayes have it. There's no on file from Mr. Goldstein's committee. Okay, item G, transaction of business on the call. Consider an act on a request of the Board of Finance and appropriation amount of $201,000 for the capital non-recurring debt line item 20537-57824 Waterford Beach Causeway Bridge fabrication based on consistency with the capital improvement program. Do I hear a motion? Hear a second?
Second.
Brian?
Good evening, Tom, and everyone else.
This is Brian Flaherty, Director of Recreation and Parks. This request has been on the capital improvement program for quite some time. So Brian, you want to bring us up to date, please?
I'd be happy to. We're getting to the stage where we actually have specifications developed, construction documents developed. It's been reviewed by engineers. For those of you that have followed this, you know, it started with Hurricane Sandy, as Mr. Denbeck had mentioned. We brought the bridge back up to a safe condition after Hurricane Sandy, and then we needed to go and actually do a geotechnical survey, go through the plans with the engineers. So to make a long story short, what we have now is a what I feel a reliable number in front of you that will allow us to put together a cast-in-place concrete deck bridge replacing the wooden structure at Waterford Beach Park now. Just some quick dimensions, it'll be 12 feet 6 inches in width, and the entire deck span will be 18 feet. We will have enough support for that structure to get any ambulance over. I know that was a concern that was brought forward in the past. That will be taken care of. We're going to try to keep it as natural as possible with the beach area obviously being natural, so we'll have the timber rail. We did have the plans completed in January of 2018. You may ask why we're waiting till now. We were rapidly approaching the beach season. We didn't want to start the project in the winter. So this would be a project, if you approve it, move it forward. We will start construction after the beach season, I would say late fall, so we can get as many of our beach patrons, so we won't have to block access. But it could be several weeks of beach closure while this structure goes in. It involves micro-POW foundations, which are drilled to the bedrock and anchored to the bedrock. So once this bridge is constructed, it's not going anywhere. And I happily stand for any questions.
Director of Recreation Park, Director? Any question? Yes, please.
I'm curious about, from what I understand, most of the damage to the bridge was done by extreme storm activity. You mentioned Sandy, perhaps Irene also caused some undermining. I'm curious about the structure of the bridge in the case of future heavy storm activity. You mentioned that you're going to be drilling and attaching the structure to the bedrock. In your opinion, should we have another storm with the destructive capacity that Sandy had when it hit the region, do you think this bridge will need further repairs, or will the plan as it has been put before us, do you think that the structure will endure in a relatively decent shape?
I do have some design experience, not a lot. I'm not an engineer, but in working with engineers for many years and discussing this plan, that was brought up very early on in the discussion. and that's why we went to that micro-pile type foundation. Literally, if we got a storm, and it's hard to predict some of those things, but if we did have a storm of Sandy's strength, they were very confident that that bridge would still be in place and would require very few repairs. It's a very, very sturdy construction. That's why the cost is, as you'll see, is a bit high, but I have every faith in the plans that we've reviewed.
Well, any additional? Yes, Ivy.
How is the size of the new bridge going to compare to what's there now? Is it going to be bigger, wider?
It'll be a little longer. The width will be very close. And if you look at the natural structures there right now, we're not going to remove any of that. So the two bridge abutments will remain, and then the wing walls coming off of the abutments will remain as well. So we don't have to go through that permitting process.
You're not going to disturb the water bed or?
No, ma'am. And there's specific, in the construction documents, there's specific things that they'll have to do to make sure nothing goes into the water and secure the site and those type of things.
Totally used.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional question? Mr. Mullin?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brian, do I understand correctly that the new bridge is going to rest on the current existing abutments?
Yes. It will sit on the existing abutments. It will actually extend out. The micro piles, which will be supporting the bulk of the weight, will be actually extended further out from the additional abutments. So the main reason there, I believe, is they just did not want to have to deal with touching those abutments.
And the abutments were not damaged during the tropical storms, hurricanes?
There was some damage. Right after the storms, we did have an engineer do an analysis of the actual structure and the support structure. And we basically limit what goes over that bridge. We lock the gate. We only allow a tractor of a certain weight to go over it. And that was based on the original report of the engineer after the storm.
So briefly, in layman's terms, what was done to reinforce or repair the existing abutments?
The abutments were more or less inspected. We personally didn't do any work to the abutments themselves. It was recommended that we do so in the future. The repairs that our crew made was on the actual deck structure itself, the support boards underneath the deck structure, and the engineer was involved with the rest of the actual evaluation of the wing walls and what have you.
So the anchoring system is really the major support of the new structure?
That is correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional question? Any additional question? No additional questions, we'll take it to a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Anybody abstain? And thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Item 2 on the agenda, consider act upon request from Board of Selectmen for the acceptance of Sherman Darcy Road cul-de-sac into the town roadway system. Contingent upon approval by the town attorney of all documents, and 15 days after acceptance, approval by the ITM, and authorized to release the town road easement to the former turnaround. Motion. A second. Dan, you want, or Mr. Beano want to explain about the contingent upon approval of the town attorney part?
Certainly. Basically, this is a road that was built by a contractor to our specifications. It has been accepted by planning and zoning. It's been accepted by the Public Works Department to meet all the requirements. There is one exception in here where the demarcation of the recreation portion of that land has to be still done. That doesn't impact the actual road itself. It's off in the woods area. The town attorney has reviewed this and has approved it. Right, Rob?
Yes, there are two parts to this. If you take a look at that map that was attached as part of the RTM agenda, You'll notice that the way the subdivision went in and the approvals, that the end of Shawandasi turns into what we would typically see as a round cul-de-sac at the end of Shawandasi. So that's where the drainage is, and that's where the final improvements were made. But for order for that to happen, there was not enough room for a full cul-de-sac at the time that the town was developing and improving the streets. So, how to explain this? So the small little dash lines are what the developer is going to give us in order to complete the cul-de-sac. And then we are now in the process, as you are tonight, of accepting that portion of land into the town inventory as the approved cul-de-sac for Shawandasi Road, and will give us a complete circular cul-de-sac pursuant to the planning and zoning approval, safety-wise, snowplow, etc. Now, just down below that is sort of a rectangle with stripes in it. And back when we didn't have the ability to put a complete cul-de-sac on Shawandasi Road, Department of Public Works came along and we did one of those T's so that you can sort of pivot and turn around if you get to the end of that street. In order to do it, the town took a right-of-way to that rectangular piece so that it ended up being the T at the end of Shawandasi. So what we're doing now is we're releasing our rights. It says, "To be dissolved, easement to the town of Waterford." So as part of what you're approving tonight, once I review the documents with the other attorney for the subdivider, we'll be presenting the warranty deed to them and also a release of our easement so that that piece returns to the developer as a fee simple piece of the land. And actually, when you look at the big plan, that's, I think that's like part of somebody's front yard right now. So that goes back to them, and then we take the rest of the completion of the cul-de-sac.
Okay, anybody got any questions for the first selectman or town attorney on this subject? Yes, please. Please.
So we're adding a lot of impermeable area to this region, it seems like, with the completion of the cul-de-sac. How is drainage accounted for, and making sure that we're not adversely impacting the water table or anything like that?
Pretty state-of-the-art. I was at the subdivision application hearings that went on for almost 2 months on this application. Maureen Fitzgerald, who's our top wetlands and environmental analyst, was involved. And the center of that cul-de-sac is actually a pretty refined drainage area that brings the water back down underneath that area, puts the vortex in, and tries to protect it environmentally. So we were really conscious of the fact that you've got the Niantic River right there and the cove, and we're trying to make this as sensitive a development as possible. A huge chunk of this subdivision is all open space. So these are the lots tight along the existing roads, and we made sure they didn't develop any new roads and go up into that open space. So it actually was one of the harder designs to get through.
Okay. Any additional question? Any additional question? No, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? The ayes have it. Item 3 on the agenda. Consider act upon a motion to discuss all item for potential sale of the former Comanche School property in executive session. Do I hear a motion? That, yeah, in the motion for executive session, besides members of the RTM, you want yourself and the town attorney, that's it? Please. Okay. So the motion is that the RTM, first selectman, and town attorney go into executive session, then we'll come on executive session to report back. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Staying, the ayes have it. I'll ask the audience to excuse us for a little bit, we'll get back to Okay, 53.
Thank you.
Approval of town attorney as language or form. I hear a motion. Second. Discussion. Now, at this time, maybe for the guests that just arrived, the town attorney and first selectman would like to summarize the process here and answer, and give them what the proposal is for that property, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Town Attorney Rob Avina. Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the delay. We're back in open session, and I would just like to begin with a quick summary of why we're here, and then the first Selectman Dan Stewart would also like to comment, and I know that our team might have some questions and people from the floor. So, as you already discussed, earlier this evening on the agenda tonight is a consideration. As people say, we've been around this morning before, so I will explain a little bit about that. For possible development of the old Cohasset School. And quickly, I will say to you that this does include the existing structure of the school in the option agreement. So, as people know, the school closed back in 2008. There was a study group that was put together of RTM and other folks looking at various reuses of the property. In 2011, there was, we call it HEPA, that's the group that does the 55 and over. They were interested in it as they did the project up on Clark Lane. They began to look at the site for potential use. I believe I met with some of you folks then. I know we had a series of meetings with the HEPA officials. However, the funding that they use is a special kind of federal funding, and that ran out. So there was no ability for them to proceed then. Around 2012, 2013, we had a request for proposal out there, and the only one that responded was someone called Center Plan, which was the folks that ended up building the Dunkin' Donuts ball field up in Hartford. I think some of you came to those meetings. They showed a lot of pictures and diagrams and plans, and I believe Dan remembers it was up to like 125 units, even more perhaps, that they were looking at for that site. They ran into a lot of complications with their ballpark and basically pulled out of the deal, and we really didn't hear anything more from Center Plan after that. About a couple of years or so ago, I guess it's been about 2 years now, we had an inquiry from Mr. Foley, who's the same gentleman that is the auctioneer for tonight. Mr. Foley was looking at putting some units on that property. He started to go through the planning and zoning process, but he did not succeed with planning and zoning, and he pulled out at that time even though he had done some preliminary work. Mr. Foley has taken a look. The state still has a program that he could be eligible for credits to put a project together. He's come back, he's looked at the property, and he's still interested, and of course he heard a lot of folks' comments at the meeting. He would be willing to go, and I know this number gets thrown around a lot, but he would go with a minimum of 44 units. He would consider whether he would get more, but as you folks know the process, that's all up to planning and zoning, and he'd have to go in front of them and present what his proposal will do. So this proposal is for a minimum of 44, but he's willing to go with 44. And I asked the other day, and of course this will all happen in front of planning and zoning, but here's the kind of breakdown that he was looking for with those units. 50% of his units would be for elderly that meet the affordability profile of the state of Connecticut, which is now up to about $58,000 a year as a family unit living in the unit. And that would be around 22 units. You would then have 9 units that would have no cap on income. So if you put market rate on those units, people, a young engineer can move in there, they'd have to pay the market rent, and they would have a unit just like somebody who was meeting the elderly affordability profile. He's going to reserve another 5 units. You'd have to qualify. All that stuff has to go in front of planning and zoning. Usually, like the Victoria Apartments down the street here, the application of planning and zoning is about that thick. You have to describe how you're going to manage your units, what the managing unit is like, how do people qualify, how do they get background checks. All that stuff goes into the special permit criteria of planning and zoning here, enforced by our zoning officer. He'd like to set aside 5 units for veterans that can meet that 58,000 a year affordability index. And then lastly, out of the 44 units, 8 units would be reserved to meet the affordability criteria of $58,000 a year or less. And so that is his original, or not original, but that is his initial proposal that he showed to us, and that he would have to present to planning and zoning. And of course, I think someone asked me at Board of Selectmen the other night, we're still talking wetlands. We all know there's a belt of wetlands in the back. So whatever plan has to fit on that site has to go through planning and zoning, special permit, and wetlands, and that's all to come. So how the pricing goes, and I know everybody has some questions about that, is it's an option, and it has a floater in it, so that the base option right now is if he was to get any kind of approval, and he was to get his bonding chief of financing from the state of Connecticut, he would pay the town $660,000 for the property. As you know, we had quite a bit of environmental cleanup over the years in that property. Both the state and the town are in for close to $800,000 or $900,000 of cleanup money on that property right now. Certainly that's something that you try to recoup if possible, and the state would like us to do what we can. But anyways, the base price is $660,000 for 44. If it went all the way up to the 56 units, and that depends again if you could possibly get any plans through planning and zoning, that raises the value to the $840,000 value. The other terms, basically as a lawyer, are pretty straightforward. Everything is contingent on the fact that he's got to go through the whole drill. That's not at the town's expense. And he's got to go through the planning and zoning, the special permit. Public hearings are necessary whenever it's a special permit. We have now a new design committee that's part of planning and zoning, so he'll be referred to the design committee. That'll have public meetings, and you can review, and you'll see what they'll be reviewing. And then a lot of things you mentioned tonight. Traffic study, absolutely required with a special permit. You cannot go anywhere without the traffic study. Drainage, all the other criteria, that's something you mentioned tonight, that will all have to be addressed at the planning and zoning level. The reason that we involve the Board of Selectmen at this level and RTM is really for 2 things. Number one, disposition of town property cannot happen without a Board of Selectmen and RTM meeting. And number 2, they often ask, as certainly they did in the executive session, how do you derive price? You know, what are the terms of the deal? What is our strategy as far as how you would close the property next year? It wouldn't even close, I don't think, until June or sometime around then in 2019. But obviously, I would have to just act as your guys' attorney. I'd have to do a closing of the property, and warranty deed, and sale of the property if we got that far. So it's a sort of a basic thing whether or not to dispose of the property in this manner or not, and then it still has to go through all the other steps that he has not succeeded in before. I have a strong suspicion, and he has had track record as a developer, he's got other projects he's completed, that if he tries to do his best effort this time around and go through all this process and go through planning and zoning, and he is just not successful with a well thought out special permit plan that he needs to provide, you know, I don't think we'll see Mr. Foley again. He simply feels like he wants to give it another try. Again, from what he looks at from the perspective of his own, is that he may want to try to look at Route 85 corridor and the fact that there is some, you know, groceries at Target and there is some walking. We certainly need to do more planning down there with crosswalks and your guys' ability to get around the Route 85 corridor there. But it is more, this project is more trying to tilt toward that section of the traffic and not try to obviously substantially go backwards into the neighborhood. But that's something he's going to need to prove if he's going to go forward in front of planning and zoning. So that was the presentation we made. Dan might have some comments.
Thank you, Rob. Just a few comments. When you talk about traffic and other things out there, we have a couple of examples of what we've done here in Waterford in the past. For instance, I have at Brook Ferry Commons, there's 140 units over there on approximately 20 acres of land. That's a very large condominium complex, which has a lot of traffic coming in and out, yet they only have one entrance and one exit. It is the same, and there isn't any line of traffic coming through there. They come right out onto Road Ferry Road, and we've had very minimal problems there. Within that project, one of the questions I asked of the superintendent's office today was how many students do we have in Waterford schools from 140 units? And the answer is 12. We have 5 students at Waterford High School, we have 2 at the middle school, and we have the remainder, which would be 5, at the elementary school at Great Neck. I also asked them about Stone Heights, and the answer was similar. Stone Heights is 90 units, and they have 10 students. That's part of what happens in the multifamily housing marketplace. So we see that as being a big part of what we'll be looking at. We currently do have a park directly across the street from the Cohansey building, where we have the Diedrich Field, and we have a playground associated with it, as well as bathrooms and other facilities there. When we looked at this facility with the committees that we had established early on in this process, there was not a lot of other alternatives provided. And we talked to the real estate agents, we've talked to consultants as far as what's the best use for this property. And they've all come back and said multifamily housing. Within the multifamily housing, it's important to notice the difference between low income and affordable income. When Rob talked about the senior housing of 30 units, or something to that number, $58,000, that's a fairly good income for people who could live on an elderly level. When you talk low income, that's a different marketplace, and that's not what we're entertaining here. Market rate on these apartments we believe to be the $1,200 to $1,400 range. We're not really sure until he comes forward to zoning and planning and zoning. We do feel that there's a lot of issues that you've brought up tonight. We've listened. Many of those issues will be brought into what he does as his piece, but he has to bring it before planning and zoning. Tonight is not about zoning, because the zoning up there today is what's currently there. He has to ask for a special permit. That's what he has to do, not the town. We believe that this could be potentially good for the town. We are concerned about the brownfield grant and taking down the old building, which just simply cost us more money. We've invested a lot already. And one of the issues that you talk about with traffic, there were 50 employees when Cohansey School was active. And that was a doable place. They actually parked over at Diedrich Field for the most part. And those 50 employees were pretty much one car per person. So that's pretty much where we are. And hopefully this board can approve the option to simply put it on the table for planning and zoning.
You folks have questions for me, otherwise I'll kind of move over that way so you can comment.
I have a question.
I accept the question. Go ahead.
We have, we spoke about the baseball field. That baseball field, sometimes they have games there, and it's packed. And so they can have a very active.
I'm sorry, the mic, man.
I'm gonna get me out of the way. Throw us out. Thank you.
That field he was talking about is a very active baseball field. We have a lot of softball games, girls softball games that go on over there. There's a lot of traffic sometimes there, a lot of traffic, and it's a family place. When you say that there's a park across the street from Cohansey School, kind of, sort of, there's like a little slide there, but there's nothing else. There's no swings. There's not a lot of places for the kids to play there. The other thing is when you're talking about 85 and walking distance, a man was killed last year, the year before, walking up that street. There's no sidewalk from the Dayton Road, where it goes into Dayton Road right there, all the way down to Waterford Commons. And from Waterford Commons down to Crossroads. So there are a few problems with the traffic, along with you know, the baseball and the family life there that is going on. I just wanted to raise those couple of questions.
Thank you, ma'am. What's your name, ma'am?
Gail Corrales.
Yeah,
Gary Pirelli, 49 Kenyon Road. When you say veterans, are we talking military or veterans?
I usually say military veterans, but that's what I was thinking.
Somebody in the military, you know, like my son is a veteran. He's out of the military. That to me is a veteran. Somebody in the military who's enlisted or whatever the case may be is in the military. So
Active, I would consider that active military.
Okay, active.
But the word veterans is what, so.
Not active. Not active. Okay. And then Stone Heights and Jordan Commons, are those managed by a management company and they just rent units?
They have a condo association, so once the developer's done, he elects people from the units to become a condo association. And they usually hire a management company to plow and take care of the amenities.
Right, but I guess my question is, do people buy the condos, choose not to live there, and then rent the condo?
Not in, yes, but some, or no, not any different than a house. I mean, I live in a
Well,
condo.
right, but that shows ownership.
Well, there's, two things about
You're
the
not gonna have that
ownership.
at Comanche, are you?
Well, it
Those
actually,
are just gonna be rental units.
the option says, in one of the RTM members, that's just what you did. It says, we consider in town of Waterford, multifamily / units / condos.
Right.
So in other words, you can apply and designate that as you will. This one, I agree with you. I know Victoria Gardens, we just got through, they're building down by the old drive-in, the old Waterford drive-in when we were kids.
Right.
They're putting those units in. When they do the multifamily under this special permit criteria, you have to bring like this big book, and you have to show how are you going to meet all the management criteria
Right.
of that multifamily units.
Right.
It's pretty significant, and he has to comply with that, or he's going to be in breach of the zoning.
Right, okay. And the other thing would be, you know, you mentioned the criteria for people, the tenants.
Yes.
How flexible is that gonna be? Like, they can say, so many veterans, so many senior citizens, can that change?
Goes right into the special permit, so those allocations have to be met, or they'd have to come back for the adjustment.
Right.
So we try to keep it, I mean, again, I don't know plus or minus one, but it's pretty carefully.
So if they got 24 units for senior citizens and only 3 are occupied, they're gonna let those other ones just sit there vacant until they fill them?
They have to come in, say what your problem is. That's part of the special permit criteria.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Identify yourself again, sir?
Phil Fowler, 37 Dayton Road. Some time ago, we've had these same meetings, not with this particular developer, but with Center Plan, and there was some discussion about low income. And we were admonished not to speak about people in the low income type of thing. Today, doing some research on this Mr. Foley and people like him, I went to, I forgot what it was, I didn't have a chance to print it, but it was for the state of Connecticut. The portion of the state that's going to give him tax rebates, tax cuts, whatever happens to be. And right on their homepage, the heading says low income. Now, what is it? Is this low income or is this affordable? And what the hell is the difference?
I think it may just be, you know, the modern age, but the idea is that affordable means that you should be able to afford the rent. You're not going to get a subsidy, what we call when we're Section 8 or something. No, nobody's going to come along and pay your rent for you, so you're sitting out on the back porch.
But this sounds like a smoke show. We call it one thing, and then when you go to the source, it says low income.
Well, I can't help the your state of Connecticut is also 20 billion in debt, so I don't quite know how to explain them sometimes. But all I'm saying is affordable means that you have to pay, and you have to pay according to the index, and they do look at your income taxes, and you got to file every year. So it's pretty strictly controlled. And it isn't a subsidy where you get to get a check every month that's going to help pay your rent. That's, you know, I think of that as what's called Section 8, and that's not the proposal.
You know,
It is, they'll go over it
fly shit out of it, you know what?
Yes, sir.
I'm Sean Monahan, 108 and 106 Dayton Road. Affordable living and low income, it's kind of off the cuff, but here's just my comment towards it. It basically means you could make less money on the books but sell drugs, and I'm stereotyping. Hold on, let me start over. Sean Monahan, 108 Dayton Road. As much as the sales pitch sounded good, I'm still standing on the same foundation and when I walked in here earlier today. I don't feel as though it's necessary to have it in our neighborhood regardless of the tax situation in the town of Waterford. I believe there's other ways to get income. I don't know how, but I just want to reiterate that I would also be willing to join in with many other residents in our area to figure out what to do with that property. But regardless of what's said on the other side, I can't agree with building up, whether it be for elderly or low income. And I do have a question for anybody that can answer. Is there any truth to a large amount of units going up on what would be the connecting from the other side of Crossroads that would also connect in from, or have the potential to connect in from Silva Lane down off of Vauxhall? Does anybody know anything about that? So I'll just rumor.
Yeah, that's, Sean, that's not, excuse me, I'm sorry, Tom?
I mean, let's set the record straight. Is it right or wrong?
Well, no, there's nothing on the books at this point in time.
There's no preliminary talk about it. There's not a situation where a developer is looking to acquire property across at the end of Silver Lane or anything?
Not that we have heard.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify, because I wouldn't want that to compile with everything that we're talking about here. But I am firm on it, and I believe I'm speaking on a large amount of people who we've been going through email, that we simply don't want it to take place at the old Cohansey School. So that's how I feel.
You know, if you got something new to add, I'd like to hear it, but by staying over the same stuff, I'm not sure what we're going to
You
accomplish.
guys said the same stuff earlier, so I was just reiterating.
That was helpful.
Janet Tyler, 595 Vauxhall Street Extension. I'm sorry, could you confirm or clarify again the selling price for the property?
Sure. Under the option, it's a sliding price range. He's agreeing to pay $660,000 if he's allowed to get his 44 units on the property. If he can get through zoning, which that's up to planning and zoning department and everything there, it's a sliding scale. It's basically $15,000 a unit to the town of Waterford for every other unit, but then we maxed him out. We said, but in no case can you put more than 56 units on that property. It's part of the condition of the contract. And I don't know what he can do. That would be up to the planning. He has to submit for a special permit.
And this is contingent on obtaining state funding?
He has a contingency like you would if you went to buy a house with Chelsea Groton, that if he still would like to go through this chief of financing, and if he's successful, he wants to use that financing tool vehicle. He won't know that until April or May of next year.
And how much is he asking for state funding?
I don't know what his financing arm is. I know that he needs to come up with that money if I'm going to be at a closing sometime next summer.
And Attorney Avina, you just stated that the state of Connecticut is $20 billion in debt.
Pension-wise.
Pension?
Well, that's mostly the pension thing, right? We've all talked about that, so. I don't think it has anything to do with this project. I just tend to get hot and it's been late and I'm starting to.
Yeah, I think we all are. I just didn't seem to be in our best interest, our fiscally responsible. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Dave Walsh, 975 Vauxhall Street Extension. I guess I just want to remind the board, everyone keeps talking about it's up to the planning and zoning, it's up to planning and zoning. But whether or not we move forward tonight, and whether or not this board, this RTM board, thinks that our community is important, that the people in this room are important and their decisions, is up to you. what you believe is the right thing for the town and that property and the residents of this town, you're deciding on. And I just want to make that point to everyone. We keep saying, don't worry, planning and zoning is going to do it, they're going to do it, they're going to keep this guy in check. But at the end of the day, you're voting tonight on our behalf, saying either we're important or not. Just like to remind you of that.
Jan Najelski, 602 Boxall Street Extension. And to tie on to what he was saying, we've already brought this to planning and zoning, all right? We've already had the conversation. A lot of these faces here have been there to talk to them, and they voted it down, all right? It's the same plan that we had last year. It's issues with height of the building, number of units, all right, number of people, the issues with how many cars are going to get added in, all that has already been talked to. P&Z's already shut it down once. Why do we keep revisiting this? There's got to be a better use for that property.
A couple of questions. One is, have they considered, and I know I mentioned this 2 years ago, have they considered dumping out into 85, Route 85? I know there's wetlands there. I know there's a bridge that would have to be built. I know it's costly. Has that been looked into or examined?
I think that the push has been to try to figure out some intersectional ability to come out where the pump station is as close to 85 as possible, over from the jewelry store. Once Maureen, who is terrific, and her wetlands commission looks at crossings, it'd be the only way out of town for you to have to go through that. And I think a Boy Scout got an Eagle Award about 20 years ago for mapping and researching that wetland. It's a pretty special preserve we have right now. So I think it's legally, they have every right to say, not touching our wetland, and you're certainly not filling it, and you're not putting a road through it.
Now, what about the malls where Panera Bread is and all of that? Were there wetlands down in that area?
Not Panera. Remember, in front of Target, we got an award-winning ability that Target hates being behind that woods.
Right.
But that woods is the brook.
Okay.
So we pushed them back, and we managed to keep that. That's still a Class A brook, amazing enough, even though it crosses through that area. So Maureen is on top of it.
Okay, and the other thing is, our property values, are they going to go down, stay the same, or go up? What do you think?
Been doing this for 38 years, and I've got calls from folks from you probably. I'm a planning and zoning lawyer, so I do all kinds of zoning. I always say to people, great, bring the appraiser that's going to say that based on this 10 or 15 or whatever $1 million project this guy's going to do circa 2020 construction, that's going to say that somehow lowers the price of your single family home in that area, which obviously is very, they never show up. So the idea is you can say that, but it's very, very hard to get a professional to do that study and say, yeah, here's an example of where that happened. So I don't know of any. Victoria Gardens will go in. We had some issues on the, what's that back street? Monroe Street. Yeah, so, they were, but at this point it's moving forward and we haven't heard from any of those folks lately.
Right.
So you gotta build them right and you gotta have that design. That's why we now have a design review committee.
So if our property value goes down, our taxes will go down?
Again, the mill rate sometimes goes up, as
Right,
you know.
the mill
so
rate
that's-
goes up, so
yeah.
we'll be
Yeah,
swimming
but-
at tide here.
Yeah, but
All right,
again,
thank you.
Michael?
Point of clarification for the town attorney, earlier comment, relative to an earlier comment. The proposal that went before planning and zoning some years ago, 2-3 years ago, best of my recollection, that was not rejected by the planning and zoning, it was withdrawn by the developer, is that correct?
I'm going to do it this time. I did not go to any of those meetings, so I don't have the minutes, and I did not check. But I think he did feel like he was not going to get, people here remember, but I think planning and zoning was in the 36 unit range or so that they were considering. And for his particular project, that will be very difficult to achieve financially. So if he cannot show that
at least the 44 can go there, then he might, again, not meet his financing criteria.
Tamara Tabor, 45 Kenyon Road. Can you confirm the name of Mr. Foley's business?
Well, the option is, I think he has several, and lots of folks create what they call LLCs when they do development. This one is called the HF3 Group LLC. And that's the one that's doing the project up outside of Waterbury and another one.
I mean, I guess basically, as far as I'm concerned, for the people of our neighborhood and our community, and I'm not sure how many of you live in our neighborhood and our community, but I know you all live in Waterford, but I'm not sure how many live where we live. It doesn't matter to me the number of units that are there. I want 0 number of units. It was a school, it's zoned that way, it should stay zoned that way. If it's a preschool, if it's a synagogue, it's a church, a YMCA, most of the people I think that I've spoken to would say, okay, great. Units with people living in rental apartments are not what we want in our neighborhood, regardless of where the traffic is, what the strain is on the EMS, the fire, the crosswalks, the entrance, the strain on the school system. It's not relevant. We don't want rental properties and multiple unit building in our little single home neighborhood. It's not fair. We didn't buy homes in a neighborhood like that. We don't want it. So I don't know how we're advertising this property, where we're looking for buyers, but we should be contacting people who are looking to build a YMCA, a community center, a church, a synagogue, a mosque, whatever they're looking to build, but not people who are looking to build multi-unit buildings. We don't want them, not at any height, not at any entrance, nowhere.
Point of clarification,
Point of clarification, what is the area currently zoned as during the executive session? Was some discussion of that?
I'm pretty sure it's R40, a single family 1 acre zone. Then you go to those regs, and we have other uses within that zone. You have firehouses, synagogues, churches, other special, by special permit. Including, as I went over with you, and I will say again to the audience, is that there's a provision in there for the elderly housing, and there's a provision regarding any reuse of a building that's this age and things like that. But that's all special permit. So it's a tremendous challenge to present it as a special permit.
Thank you, Attorney Vina.
Karen Danskin, 10 East Lake Drive. 10.2 acres is the size of the lot. Do you know what percentage of it is the wetlands? Oh, Greg Belassi is the one who did the Eagle Project.
I'm sorry?
Greg Belassi was the one who did the Eagle Project.
Oh, good.
And so that strip down there is, I guess I was always guessing that it was part of the footprint that the school was on, which has a big slope and, you know.
No, it's actually, they never used it, and all the wetland starts at that kind of woodland edge.
At the fence.
And it's
yeah.
like,
So
it's pretty, 3-4 acres.
it is,
Yeah.
and so I guess I always thought that that was protected from, so could that be a couple acres of the 10 acres? Do you know what percentage?
Oh, again, 10 acres is large acreage, and of that 10, part of it's wetland.
Right.
No doubt.
And that's what I was wondering,
Right.
what percentage?
Yeah, well, I think it's 3 or 4 acres or so of an area that
So we're
won't,
really down to maybe
6 or 7
6 or
acres.
7
Yeah.
acres. So if you look at, say, Stonehill, they have 140 units for 20. So if you even cut that in half and say 10 acres, that would be 70 units. So, and we're really down to 6 acres, so do that again.
They have a lot of wetlands at Stone Heights.
I guess I was just worried about the density. We're
Yeah,
talking.
and then planning, believe me, that's an issue, and that's what they're going to need to go through. Density is often a product of how can you design the project, and then sometimes it doesn't work, because you have wetlands, you've got drainage, you've got parking.
Right.
How can you put it
So
together?
the slope on the back side of that property, they can't really disturb it, yes?
No, the slopage is usually part of the design. It would
Right.
go down that hill.
It's not like they can flatten it out and,
I don't think they plan to.
yeah, okay.
More additional comments, original vote? Yes, yeah.
Molly Carino Rossi, 698 Vauxhall Street Extension. I do have some concerns with the breakup of how you're going to divide up the units and the elderly and the veterans and the affordable living and stuff. My concern is how you're going to tax the emergency services in town and the ambulance service. I know, quite honestly, that when you have an elderly population, we are definitely going to be taxing the ambulance service and what your plans are to accommodate that within the fire service and the police units. And that would just, and I'm concerned what it would do with my property values. I'm really concerned about that also.
Thank you. No other questions, we'll take it to the vote. You guys get ready for the vote? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Cairns.
Yes.
Mr. Condon.
Yes.
Mr. Denbeck.
Yes.
Ms. Driscoll. Ms. Fedor. Mr. Frascarelli. Mr. Goldstein.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Abstain.
Mr. Muckle.
Yes.
Ms. Mullen.
Yes.
Mr. Olinsu.
Yes.
Ms. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Perkins.
Yes.
Ms. Bliss.
Yes.
Mr. Rivas.
Yes.
Mr. Stancock.
Yes.
Mr. Welch Collins.
Yes. Passes 16. One abstention.
16 in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstention.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Next item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda, consider and act upon the vacancies of the RTM committee assignments.
Representative town meeting, who you represent, lots of people in this town.
Consider and act upon the vacancies of the RTM committee assignments due to the resignation of Mark Strassi in District 3, and John Appicelli in District 2. So basically what's going to happen, that the person who took Mark Strassi's place, is that you, Michael?
Yes.
You would go on the Public Protection and Safety Committee, Public Works and Planning and Development Committee, and the Long Range Physical Planning Committee.
Traditionally, the replacement representative assumes the spots on standing committees. I don't think this is planned and now standing
Okay, that's fine. All right. So Public Protection and Safety and Public Works Planning and Development. And the new gentleman who got elected tonight would take Mr. Pacelli's place on the Education Committee and the Public Works Planning and Development Committee. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Is the new gentleman come on tonight? He's not here, right? That's my phone, sorry. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining, the ayes have it. Item 6, to consider and act upon recommendation of the Board of Selectmen due to the resignation of Peter Davis, Board of Selectmen, to appoint Mark Strassi and Board of Selectmen to the Assagacha Firehouse Building Committee. Do I hear a motion? Motion made, seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Oh, sorry, Mr. Driscoll.
Did we pick someone? Oh, this is for the Mark spot? Sorry, no discussion.
If you don't want to put him on there, we can take it away, I mean. He's only been attending meetings very faithfully. So Mark Strassi would take Mr. Davis's place from representing the Board of Selectmen on the Assagacha Firehouse Building Committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining, the ayes have it. Item 7, to consider and act upon a vacancy in the Assagacha Firehouse Building Committee due to the resignation of Michael Perkins. I hear a nomination. Mr. Goldstein.
I nominate Tom Denbeck, take the place of Mike Perkins on the Assagacha Firehouse Building Committee.
Motion made for Thomas Demick. Any additional nomination? Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. In looking over the membership on the committee, you notice that the two RTM members, both of them are Republicans, and except for now Mark Strassi, everyone is a firefighter or involved with the fire, which, yes, we need their expertise, but at this point, we would respectfully request that you consider making one of the RTM members a Democrat.
It's a pleasure. Make a motion.
Yeah, there's only one floor, so now I'm waiting, we're discussing.
What? Goldstein, yes.
I hear what Mrs. Driscoll is saying, and as somebody who was on the member of the Assagacha Fire Building Committee, and one of the reasons why we recommended Tommy Denbeck is more pertaining to the ambulance service, and he was going to not only represent the RTM, but also bring his experience from the ambulance service, considering that they are renegotiating their agreement and may change the scope of how the firehouse will be designed. So I just wanted to put that into consideration.
Mr. Driscoll.
I appreciate that. I appreciate his expertise, and I think it would be good to have the ambulance service involved in the plans for the Assagacha building. That being said, this is the RTM representing the RTM. He is more than welcome to attend all the meetings as a representative, also as the moderator. We don't tend to put our moderator on RTM committees. He's ex officio, so that he could contribute at any time.
Are there any other nominations?
I nominate Representative Driscoll.
I second.
Sure.
Whoever gets the most votes, you start with the first nominee and then go to the second one. Sure, you can try.
All those in favor of Denbeck, raise your hands, please. And 7. All those in favor of Mrs. Driscoll? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 in favor of Mrs. Driscoll, 7 in favor of Denbeck.
Okay, next item on the agenda, consider act upon alternate member vacancy on the Ethics Commission due to the appointment of Francisco Madillo as a regular member term February 7, 2017 to February 4, 2019. I think tonight at the table you received a recommendation.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes?
I'd like to nominate Cindy, her son, from 86 Shore Road as an alternate to the Ethics Committee.
Motion made and seconded to Cindy Herstrom, 86 Shore Road, to serve as alternate on the Ethics Commission. Do I hear a second? Mr. Perkins, seconded. Any other nomination? Yes, sir.
I have this point of discussion, so if other people have nominations, please.
What's your question?
My question is if anyone knows Ms. Harrison personally, who can speak to her credentials, who can speak to anything about her background, because this provides me with nothing.
Yes, I grew up with her. She's out here behind me in school. She's the owner, operator.
She's the owner operator of Dyson Electric, which is a large commercial industrial electrical company. Lifetime resident of Waterford, great family, smart person.
Any additional questions?
Yep, it's the same thing. She runs the family electric business.
Right. If not, all in favor? Opposed? Staying the ayes have it. Item 9, consider and act upon a program proposal for exclusion of 2018 Connecticut Neighborhood Assistance Act program. Any outcome of public hearing to be held by the Publication Standing Committee of the RTM was tabled at the June 4th meeting of 2018 RTM. What's your pleasure? Mr. Tito.
I'd like to make a motion that we move that, this proposal out of committee. There's been no action, no further information, so there has to be a discussion.
Yeah.
I have to, sorry about faster than me. We tabled the thing from last time, so do we have to have a motion to remove from the table first?
Yeah, and I was going to say, point of order is correct, that we should have a motion to take it off the table, but from a comment of a representative 2 seconds ago, you all might want to consider the rare event that you simply don't vote it back onto the agenda, and since the projects have already gone through the fiscal year, we simply won't take it up. But the point of order is on point.
So, technically, pass over this motion. We don't have a motion to remove from the table, then this item dies, and the committee doesn't have to do any further work or report it out. It will just be removed. And for the record, it will be because the deadline passed for the application.
That would be my understanding.
Want to withdraw the motion, would the town clerk like to put it back on the agenda, right? Well, I mean,
So you're asking for a motion to remove from the table, and some of us will sit here quietly and approve it, and then it will disappear from the agenda.
fine.
No, I'm just going over the process.
I'll do it.
Motion to remove from the table is in order.
I did that.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? May opposed?
No.
Anybody? You opposed?
Yes. You opposed. Yeah, it goes away.
Can you do a roll call on that, Dave?
Wait a minute, yeah. Let's go back.
Yes.
Sorry, motion to remove.
Do nothing?
I recommend you vote no, because that takes it off your agenda, if that helps, because that would, you no longer will take it up, and they'll have to reclaim it, which means I'd have to hear from the, yeah, you just don't, well, because you're not going to take it off the table.
Take it off the table.
If you don't take it off the table, it's no longer on your
Go
agenda.
back to committee,
second, right? All in favor? All those opposed? Okay, that's the agenda. Review and confirm the present membership of the Long Range Planning Committee.
You did not vote for the firehouse on the 87?
I didn't vote. I didn't vote.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so this. What's that?
I had 8 hands up for Driscoll, I had 7 hands up for you. With 17 people here. There was.
Is there some questions?
So for that, I had April, I would go through everything. Did you vote for? That, that's what I'm missing. I have April, I would go through Portland, Suffolk, and Lewis. No, it's 7. I think it's actually not. I thought it was that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that one. Are we square? Are we square?
We're square.
I mean, we're missing somebody that wants to correct. Most of them. What against it?
I'm comfortable. Anyone else? No, it's just the number didn't necessarily total. Is that not enough? Right, so when Mrs. Driscoll was there. Right, I know that. Driscoll, Lauren, Palmer, Olinson, Kelly, Craftsman. Oh, I know that. We moved like 7 and 8. Yes, I did. And I knew there were 16 voting, and I'm like, it was numbers. I subtracted that. Between the 5 and 5. And we voted one.
Item 10, review and confirm present membership of the Long Range Fiscal Planning Committee. I'm not sure what the issue is here. It was brought up before the finance meeting.
So I know it came up and Dave did the work. We just checked the minutes just to confirm, because this committee, as you know, could become quite important quite quickly here. We're still awaiting the bid results on Millstone for January, February. So I just want to confirm that the RTM understood that this committee was in existence, that it is your committee. We checked the minutes. You're the guys that created it. There's members as listed from the First Selectman, Board of Finance, Director of Finance, Superintendent of Schools, Board of Education, and RTM. I think under new business, I don't have any problem if you had any druthers to replace your vacancy, because I guess you get 5, but just wanted you to know that it is a committee, it's out of this board, and it is functioning as a public committee with notices, etc.
I think the problem that I identified was the committee on committees, or the night that we brought everybody in on these committees, they voted for 6, and you guys had authorized 5 RTM members, but then put on 6. And my question was, do you guys have to make a motion to add the 6th member and to open up the committee, or was it just the fact that you guys wanted to do it? Okay. And Tim Condon would be that extra
be that extra person on the committee. Well, when you go back to our list of committee assignments, and that's how I always had it. I always had it with just 5 here, but when you go back to our committee assignments that I sent out to you guys to go along with the new committee assignments for Stankoff and, yes, that one there, you'll see where you guys put 6 in. And now an easy swap would be Valstrasi's gone, it would just stay at 5 and it would be over. And you guys would be back to the original 5 that you guys put in there in 2013. Or you can put one more spot in to get the 6 that you had put on back in December. I think I'm explaining it clear enough.
Currently, we're now stressing at 6. So Mark is off now, so let's use it. Both cannot replace him. I'm sorry? Both cannot replace him. But we're getting rid of him. Yeah, on the building committee. He's not on the committee.
No, no, I only had, yes.
It would stay if you don't replace Mark.
Can we go through who is on the committee?
Yes.
It's in your paper.
Well, Tim Condon's not mentioned there because my little spreadsheet didn't have a spot for that 6th spot. So I just kind of filled them in on my notes here.
He's on this, but not
Yep.
on a full list of members.
Moderator now.
He's not on the list.
So what happened?
Yes, he's not on.
What happened was when that committee was originally formed, I was put on it. When the committee on committees met in December, they put forward that list. They added the Green Party members because they needed to be represented. I was asked to step down, then the questions were raised about this. So, you know, I can still step aside if that's what, you know, if the Democrats need another seat, I understand that. But it's just trying to give some, what happened there. It was a committee on committee. Technically, that's the way it is. I haven't stepped down, but I didn't attend because we don't know how this is going to go. So, but whatever the RTM decides.
All right, well, if you're going to ask my opinion, my preference would be to vote to increase our number to 6. Would that be allowed, Attorney Marina?
Yes.
We could do that, and Tim Condon, who wants to serve, could stay on, and then we could replace Mark and just move on with our lives.
Yes.
Yes, that is a motion to amend, yes.
I second.
Amend to 6.
Driscoll, Lucas.
Question? I think if you go back 2 or 3 or more years, the number of RTM members was expected to be 5. Somehow, in error, we ended up with 6. My recommendation again would be, since the RTM back a number of years ago recommended 5 members, that we, Balistrassi, gone by virtue of his promotion, we leave the committee at 5, in accordance with the previous minutes.
There's already a motion on the floor. Are we voting?
Well, the only motion I have on the floor right now is Driscoll, second by Rivas, to expand the membership to 6.
I offer
Discussion.
that as a comment, under discussion.
Any other comments on the motion?
Just to add, I think that it was actually very intentional by the Committee on Committees to include 2 Democrats, 1 Green, and 3 Republicans to allow actually the Republican Party to have as much of a majority as possible while still being reasonable, or as much of a plurality, I should say. So I would just offer that explanation out. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
I don't recall that as a sequence of events.
To abstain at 6, that's the motion we have right now, no nominations there. Open for vote. Ms. Cairns?
Yes.
Mr. Condon? Mr. Dembeck?
No.
Ms. Driscoll?
Yes.
Ms. Fedor? Mr. Muckle?
No.
Ms. Mullen?
Yes.
Mr. Owinsu?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer? Mr. Perkins? Ms. Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rivas?
Yes.
Mr. Excuse me. Mr. Stankoff? Mr. Welch Collins?
Yes.
12 in favor, 3 opposed, 2 abstaining. Motion passes. Now we need nominations.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I nominate to take Mark Fostrassi's spot, Barry Welch Collins.
I second the motion. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All in favor? Aye.
Anybody opposed?
I abstain.